we have Miss KellyAnn Garthe, nursing instructor at OHSU Monmouth, who is going to be speaking on sugar substitutes tonight. Let's welcome KellyAnn.
Hi again, for those of you who have seen and or met me before. I missed last month, so I missed all of you. Missed coming here.
You got it.
Yeah. So, a couple months back, we talked about a little bit on sugar substitutes, and there was a lot of interest, I think, generated from that discussion. So I thought I'd expand on it just for a few more minutes here tonight at the end of our program. It's kind of a hot topic. So, sugar substitutes, artificial sweeteners, these are the non-nutritive sweeteners that are very, very popular for our diabetics, right? Some of you probably have used them. Some of you probably use them very, very, very frequently, to the tune of maybe several Diet Cokes in a day, or using them in your coffee to varying degrees. So I think it's important that you learn about some of the pros and cons, and you've probably heard it in popular media, but maybe it's better to use those or use sugar. What's the best one to use? That's the big question. You hear a lot of stuff come down the pike, and you hear it on the TV, but what's the reality with whether sugar substitutes are good or bad for you? So ultimately, artificial sweeteners or sugar substitutes have, for the most part, 0 calories. And that's what is really attractive to diabetics. 0 calories and 0 carbohydrates. So you're still kind of getting that sweet taste, but yet it's allegedly, according to the caloric number, not going to affect your diabetes. So that's kind of where the origination of the popularity of sweeteners, artificial sweeteners in diabetes comes from. But what actually is an artificial sweetener? Well, for the most part, there's these top 5 artificial sweeteners that we're going to talk about that have been FDA approved. And they're all chemicals. They're all man-made. And they're all a combination of different chemicals that could potentially even be toxic if they're all by themselves. So you kind of have to gauge the cost versus risk ratio when it comes to artificial sweeteners. And I do have actually some extra handouts that are all of these?
They're all the same, right?
Okay. So this is extra information over and above just the few minutes that I'm going to talk tonight that breaks down more specifically each type of popular artificial sweetener. So the 2 main reasons, of course, diabetics are wanting to use these are going to be for carb control and weight loss. So are these good for that? Well, let's talk about it. One of the most common artificial sweeteners that we see used in most of the products, the little packets that you get at the restaurant, is going to be aspartame. And the reason, or one of the reasons that aspartame is so incredibly popular is because one of the companies that produces it is very large and powerful and has a lot of political influence. So we won't go too far into that, but the fact is that it is a very, very sweet substance. So one of the pros to this is that it's so sweet that you can use just a very tiny amount and get the sweet that you need. Another pro is that it is FDA approved. Of course, that is very limited. There is a specific amount that you should be consuming less than in the course of a day with regards to aspartame, because over and above that, it can become toxic. So, and I think that that information is actually in your packet there. And then on top of the pro, there are some extensive cons when it comes to aspartame. One of the most important ones is that it has been researched pretty significantly and been linked to neurological disease. So not only can aspartame cause you to have neurological degeneration or changing of your neurological system, including such things as headaches or even as extensive as tremors over a period of time, but it has also been shown in research studies to have an immediate neurological effect on you. There's been a study done on pilots in which they were tested in the simulator doing their thing that pilots do, and the time was measured with just having drank water, and then their time was measured after having a Diet Coke. It maybe wasn't Coke, but it was a diet soft drink with aspartame in it, and their reaction times were shown to be significantly slower. So that's been pretty well documented. It's also associated with the very large and political companies, so you kind of have to keep that in the back of your mind. But then the other thing that's kind of conflicts with the whole diabetic experience is that it actually has been shown to increase hunger, and not just hunger in general, but hunger for carbohydrates. So it kind of gets you in the rear by doing the opposite of what you want it to do. And that's aspartame and neotame, which is another similar substance that is fairly new on the market, but it's very similarly structured to aspartame. So you may have heard of isossulfame. It's not one that you'll see in packets, but it's one that you see almost first or second ingredient on practically every single packet of gum. So now that sugar-free gum got terribly popular, especially in the 80s when dentists were really pushing that, to get rid of the sugary gum, they started using this substance with gum pretty significantly. So it is FDA approved. It's one of those 5, but it's also been shown to be carcinogenic. Carcinogenic means that it has a predisposition to potentially causing cancer. So just like the chemicals that are in cigarettes are carcinogenic, or eating a lot of burnt food is carcinogenic, this has also been shown to be carcinogenic and can lead to cancerous diseases. Another one is saccharin. Saccharin, I think, is not quite as popular as it used to be. The big thing that came out in the 80s was that saccharin was also carcinogenic. A lot of people probably heard about it, potentially leading to cancer. So it dropped in popularity, and that's the con. Of course, the pro would be that, once again, it's one of those FDA approved, and all of the FDA approved non-nutritive chemical sweeteners have a limit that's been set by the FDA as to the amount that you should be allowed to consume in the course of a day. It's incredibly sweet, of course, 700 times sweeter than sugar, so just like any of the other ones, you can use just a tiny amount. So the chances of you getting to that limit are pretty low, but then again, a lot of people like to get that taste, and a lot of people, I know I have friends that drink Diet Pop like it's going out of style, so instead of water, people sometimes say they don't like the taste of water, so. It's true, you've heard it, right? And the one that I think probably a lot of people are liking a lot more nowadays is sucralose. You see this is Splenda. The pro is that it's one of those FDA guys, but also people like it because it's good for baking. It can mix well, you can make cookies out of it. I think some people like the taste a little bit better. It's not as bitter as some of those other ones. But the con to that is that it's only safe to eat about 400 milligrams of that in a day. And I'm not sure exactly what that would translate to, but that is a pretty small number compared to the other ones. So you probably don't want to eat an entire cake made out of Splenda or 2 cakes. Or
They don't work for making cookies.
Yeah,
They crumble.
they do.
They just crumble.
They fall apart.
Nothing.
See, they're doing you a favor. Then you just can have a little crumb rather than the whole.
There you go. That's a trick. So you can have just a little crumb of it instead. And then also the one thing that I thought was kind of funny is that sucralose was actually discovered within the course of their efforts to try and find a new insecticide. So it's actually an insecticide. You can put a little bit of it in the corner of your window if you have an ant problem, and it'll get the ants. Yeah.
They won't touch it. I've tried it.
You tried it? Really?
They won't touch it.
Really? Wow, you have some smart ants. And then the natural sweeteners that we see that are non-nutritive, most commonly will be stevia or truvia. You see that in the stores. It's determined to be safe. It is not FDA approved, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It means it's generally determined as safe. I think the GDAS is the acronym that they use for that. So, because it's a natural, comes directly from a plant. Has anybody ever tried the actual stevia plant?
They're not easy to grow.
They're not, and they're difficult to come by. I came across one in Florida one time, and I just snatched a leaf off of it. It was at Lowe's, and just chewed on the leaf to see if it tastes the same as the little packets, and it was strikingly the same. Imagine that. So some people don't like the stevia taste. It does kind of have a little bit of a planty, kind of bittery flavor. So it depends on your taste. For the most part, it's all pros, except in very, very, very high amounts. It has been shown to potentially be linked to being carcinogenic. So just like any of the other artificial sweeteners, you want to use it definitely in moderation.
She mentioned coconut crystals on something.
Yeah, coconut
Can you comment on
crystals.
that? 'Cause I've never heard of it.
I believe that coconut crystals are nutritive. They have calories. But they're a difference. They're not sucrose, so they don't come from cane sugar, but they're derived from coconut. So
Well, it's
is
like-
that-
it's
do you-
like-
Helen? I'm sorry, I hate to put you on
No,
the
you're
spot, but do you know anything about coconut crystals? Are they caloric? I'm guessing they are.
I think they are, but we've got them sweetening this bag of popcorn.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody knows what the regular, like if it was sweetened with sugar,
Yeah.
what it would be to be able to do a comparison with this.
Uh-huh.
It's the same thing, sweetie. So 2 cups of this is called 6 grams of sugar.
That
And
helps you out at all.
the coconut nectar crystals are the second ingredient after the popcorn.
Sure.
So there's,
Yeah.
besides the popcorn, that's.
And the thing about coconut too is, and I don't know how much of it is in the actual crystals, but it's a medium chain fatty acid, which is really good for your heart and your skin, and it actually helps with weight loss. So coconuts are really good for you to eat anyway. And then finally, we'll talk about sugar alcohols. You've probably heard of xylitol or sorbitol or mannitol. Those are all sugar alcohols. So they are not non-nutritive, meaning they generally have about half the calories of regular sugar. So they do still have a little bit of calories, which is a pro, but the con is that especially sorbitol tends to have a bit of a laxative effect. So yeah, if that doesn't bother you.
It's a weight thing.
Yeah.
You can have that and lose weight too.
Probably not the healthiest way to lose weight. So it can actually have that. So xylitol has been used in the gums that dentists recommend, and I think they taste good. They're, dentists like them. So if I had to choose gum that didn't have the acesulfame in it, I would choose the gum with the xylitol in it.
So I'm new to this whole thing, so all the FDA approved ones will kill you.
Isn't that funny?
Aren't FDA approved.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how that works? That
Doesn't Monsanto own FDA or something?
they're somehow, I won't say they're in bed together, but they're at least in the same department, maybe.
They're putting together a bill Monday before the legislature to pass a Monsanto Protective Act. So
Yeah.
we can
Yes,
go against
I've heard about this.
Monsanto
Yep.
now.
Untouchable.
It's a hot topic for sure. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Monsanto, they are the corporation that makes genetically modified organisms such as corn being one of the most popular ones, and canola and soy. So they have a lot of interest in our area, in our agricultural area.
So they can poison us.
Yeah.
Yes, and big money, big politics. So.
How in every other country, they're not allowed to, just in our country.
It's true.
Everywhere else is labeled.
Yep. So it might be something that you will be interested in researching in your not too distant future.
Finding a different governor.
Well, we can talk about that later. So the bottom line for all of these, there's pros, there's cons, definitely. It's important to make those educated decisions, right? Fill yourself in on what the pros are, what the cons are. You're the only person that can decide how important it is to you to get that sweet taste, or do you want to just do things in moderation or just have little bits, or you kind of have to figure out for your own what's best for you. So that's all I have to say.
Agave.
Yeah.
Agave.
Agave is a caloric sweetener. It's very, very, very sweet. So you can use less of it than you would of sugar, but it does have calories and it does have carbohydrates. But it's better than sugar for diabetics as far as the amount of sugars that are in it and the amount that you use. Yeah. Honey is kind of along the same lines. And the thing too with agave and honey is that there's other benefits to those, like sugar doesn't have any other benefit other than it just tastes good. But when you eat honey, it helps with your immune system. It helps with, if you eat the raw honey, then you can get some of the vitamins that are in the royal jelly, which is the jelly that they make for the queen. And there's a lot of really good things to do with honey. So if you use it in small amounts, there's added benefits. So to me, that kind of tips the scale in the it's better. You still have to do it in small amounts, though, for sure. Yep.
KellyAnn, over here, we have Scott has a question.
Yeah.
I have to admit, this conversation sounds much tastier than the earwax conversation. My real question for you is, has there been an analysis of the dental effects of the various sweeteners? Because obviously sugar is bad for the teeth.
Right.
I don't do sugar where possible for that specific reason. And
Right.
since everything else kills us,
Uh-huh.
or we're trying to avoid the calories, okay, which of the artificial sweeteners are less detrimental to our teeth would be a good question.
So the only one that I'm familiar with is having actually been researched and then thereby promoted because of the positive effects was the xylitol and the sugar alcohols as actually being beneficial, you know, not detrimental, but then having also some benefits on top of it too. So.
Bottom line for slow learners, like, is there a benefit in drinking Diet Coke versus straight Coke, or how much? Or
Well, Diet Coke has aspartame, so on the label it'll say that it has 0 calories and 0 carbohydrates, but then it also has the additional effects of potentially affecting your neurological system, which might be compounded or made worse because of the fact of having diabetes. So there's so many other just potential factors to that. To me, especially aspartame is so detrimental, you know, because of the neurological aspects of it, that I would encourage you to be very, very aware of how much you're consuming and how often. But there's no benefits nutritively to either Diet Coke or regular Coke. So.
any connection to vision that you've heard of? For
To vision?
Yeah.
Other than any neurological, just generalizably neurological, and because your vision is so largely neurologically related, not that I know of, but it's quite possible that there is. Yeah.
So also unrelated to the aspartame is diet drinks are notoriously high in sodium.
That's a good point too.
So-
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, absolutely. What are the other, you know, potentially high electrolytes? For example, a lot of them are very high in chloride, and that can be a problem to your metabolic system that's already affected by diabetes. And they also have phenylalanine, which some people are actually born with the incapacity to process phenylalanine. It's an amino acid. Yeah.
I've heard it, because you are so knowledgeable. The diet or the fake sugars trigger your body into thinking that there's something sweet coming and then they
Yes.
wait for it and you don't have it, so you want something anyway.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. They trick your brain into and you actually can have a release of insulin, and you can even become hypoglycemic in some people. So, yeah. Yeah.
About 20 years after the Canadians and the Americans did a study on cyclamates, we were still buying them in Canada.
Yeah.
Why? It's like we all of a sudden decided the FDA knows what's right.
Right.
I think you can still buy cyclamates in Canada.
It's probably true.
So it was a joint study in Toronto that they did this.
Uh-huh.
And for some reason, the United States decided to outlaw it. Canada didn't.
Interesting.
So now, where are you putting your faith? In the FDA?
Right. Right. Well, that's why being educated is the bottom line for sure.
And as far as I'm concerned, we don't go up there anymore and do it.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the best sweeteners there was. Because you could cook with it,
Uh-huh.
you could can with it, and
Wow.
you know, it was great.
So it could questionably be political in nature then, huh?
Monsanto.
Am I going over?
Close, I think this lady here has one.
I just wanted to know some knowledge about the products that we see every day on the shelf with a little Splenda
Yeah.
marking on it.
Yeah. That's sucralose.
That's
So that's the one that, just let me go back to the slide if I can here. Oh, one more. See, I had to put this fancy animation
Are
in
you
it.
saying that's one of the better products that we might use?
No. It's one of those top 5 that has a limit on the amount that you can consume in a day. And that one in particular, Sucralose or Splenda, is the one with the smallest number of what you can consume in a day. So it's only 5 milligrams per kilograms that you're allowed to intake. So it's actually pretty significantly smaller, yeah. Now, I don't know what 400 milligrams would look like. So it might look like a cake, it might look like 10 cakes. So I don't know what that measurement would look like, but 400 milligrams is the smallest of all of those that your body can tolerate before it starts reacting to a toxic level.
So when ice cream says half a cup,
Yeah.
that means a little, because with the Splenda in the ice cream.
Yeah.
that
Well,
will affect you?
No, not for half a cup of ice cream. That's likely, anywhere from a couple of milligrams of Splenda. So you're not getting at toxic levels just to have a half a cup.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?